carry on with our meditation and the retreat in daily life. I'd like to begin with a quotation from Albert Einstein. He says this, he says, "It is easier to disintegrate an atom than a prejudice." It is easier to disintegrate an atom than a prejudice. What is a prejudice? A prejudice is a prejudgment. To judge a person, an event, a situation prior to knowing, prior to studying the facts, trying to know all the facts, is making a generalization based on one or two instances. Today we look up the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, verses 25 to 37. Luke 10, verses 25 to 37. It is the parable of the Good Samaritan. As we know the parable goes like this. There are travelers traveling, and then he is found beaten up on the road. And he is lying down there, and first a priest passes him by, looks at him, and probably in a hurry to go for his work in the temple, and he leaves him there. Then you find that a priest passes by. A priest passes by, then a Levi passes by, and finally you have a Samaritan passing by. And then Jesus gives us his conclusion. It all begins with the Pharisees asking him questions, and specifically the question is, who is my neighbor? So let us consider the various characters in this parable. The first character we will consider is the victim. The victim is beaten up and thrown on the ground. As a matter of fact, to dare to travel alone in those areas means he was a very reckless person, a person who was foolhardy. Usually, people traveled in a convoy or in a caravan, and you have other people to help you, to support you. He was a victim because of his carelessness. Then you have the priest passing by. The priest goes from a distance. He probably thinks the man is dead, and if he touches a dead man, according to the customs of those days, he wouldn't be allowed to enter the sanctuary for 7 days. And so he had a greater love for rituals, for his work in the temple, than for human beings, than for service. Then the Levite passes. The Levite says, "Look, this can be a ploy." Usually they keep someone dead on the ground or lying there, beaten up, so that you stop and go to help him. And the moment you go to help him, you touch him, immediately they come out from their hiding places and they beat you up. So it could be a ploy. So he says, better not to. Safety first. And finally you have the Samaritan coming up. And the Samaritan goes and helps the man. Now we have to keep in mind that the Pharisees are Jews. And the Jews and the Samaritans don't get on well. And yet Jesus puts the Samaritan as the model. Now, who are the Samaritans? The Jews had a very strong kingdom under the reign of Solomon. After Solomon died, their kingdom disintegrated. This big kingdom of Solomon broke up into two parts, the northern part of the kingdom and the southern part. The northern part was called what was it called? No? It was called, and it had its capital at Samaria. And the southern part was called Judah and had its capital at Jerusalem. Now, since they were divided, they were targets by foreign kings. And the Assyrians came and captured the northern kingdom. The northern kingdom was captured, and they took Israeli women as their wives and concubines. The children born of this union were called Samaritans, and the Jews looked upon these people as inferior, as outcasts. So in this parable, Jesus brings out and shows us that these outcasts are people with a purpose, who want to serve, who went out their way to serve. So what is the lesson that Jesus is trying to give to us? The lesson is this, that we should not be prejudiced towards any person based on caste, creed, color, gender, or race. He wants us to be all inclusive, to be open to everyone. Now why? So Jesus came to give us the good news. And what was the good news? The good news could be put up into two parts. The first part is Jesus came to tell us that God is our Father. And if He is our Father, we need to go out to Him in total love. His love for us is totally unconditional. But if God is our Father, then we are all brothers and sisters. Some whom we know, some whom we are still to know, but we are all brothers and sisters. And that is what Jesus wants to include everyone into our lives. Prejudice comes and spoils our relationships. We keep distances. We consider some people outcasts, some people as inferior. Jesus wants us to get rid of this negative way of thinking. He wants us to regard everyone as our neighbor. As a matter of fact, in that parable, it begins with, "Who is my neighbor?" And it ends with Jesus saying, "Who was neighbor to that victim, to the man who had fallen?" It's the man who helped. So the whole parable tells us we need to go out in love to everyone on the earth. Everyone from every nation is our brother, is our sister. So looking at people with tainted glasses will not help us to grow in this life. We need to stop categorizing, dividing people, putting people into various compartments and seeing them otherwise as good. So race, caste, gender, color, these are things we need to avoid. There is this story told about the Guru. And the Guru asked his disciples, "Tell me, when does night end and day begin?" And after thinking for some time, the disciple says, "Master, when I can look into the distance and say, that animal is a horse and the other one is a cow, then night has ended and the day begun. The Master said, yes, but not totally correct. The second one said, when I can look into the distance and see trees, and I can say that this one here is a mango tree, and the other one there is a tamarind tree. And the Master says, yes, totally correct, but not fully correct. And finally they ask him, you tell us, when does night end? And he tells them, when I look at the face of any man or woman and see in that person my brother and sister, then, however dark it may be at night, night has ended and day has begun. Otherwise, we are living in darkness. And so this whole parable of the Good Samaritan is meant to take us away from our prejudices. Prejudices which divide us, prejudices which make us look at other people as evil, as bad. We need to go out of our way and accept them as they are. So today, as we reflect on this parable, which is found in Luke chapter 27, chapter 10, verses 25 to 37, we reflect and see the message that Jesus gives us. The message is to go out in love to every human being, to treat every human being as our brother and sister, to care, to be concerned about each one on earth. We will now spend some time in prayer before the Blessed Sacrament. Almighty God bless us, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
We have this retreat in daily life every evening at 7 p.m. Those of you who are in Nashik are all welcome to come here in person. Good night and God bless you all.